All right, welcome back. In this video, we are going to talk about how to actually interact with this tic-tac-toe board that we built in the first video. So right now, whenever you click on this, nothing happens, as you can see. So now we want to change that. So as you hopefully know, if you've done some React, you know that you want to always pass down data from the parent to the child, right? And so we're going to talk about how to do that. So the first thing we're going to do is in our state, we're going to say current value equals x. All right. Uh, and then that's all we need right now. We're going to leave that. We'll leave that. We're going to need that in a minute. So what we want to do first is have in our box, we want to have some sort of a click handler, right? And so um, let's just put an X right here, just so we can see X's on the page. All right, so now every box has an X, and so we want to give it a click handler, and so that's going to say on click. That's the, if you notice, this is camel case. Unlike regular HTML, this is camel case for JSX. And so we can just say console.log clicked. All right, let's just make sure that that worked. So open up the console. Oh, I made a mistake earlier of not passing in my key to my maps. Terrible mistake. All right, cool. So got my clicks. Let me fix that error real quick. So anytime you're mapping, I can't believe I didn't do this. You want to pass in a key. Typically, you don't want to pass in the index. Right now, it's fine, but usually you're going to want, like if you're mapping over a list of users or something, you're going to want to pass in something that's something like the user ID, right? Something that's like really truly unique. But this works for now. So the same thing here, pass in the key. What that does is that keeps that like helps the browser know, helps it kind of keep track of which element is which. So if you change something on the first item, it'll look for the one with that key. It'll just sort of help it keep track of things as things change. So but we're safe to use the index right now because the order of the elements is not going to change ever throughout the game, right? So we actually don't have to worry about it. Where you might have to worry about it is if things are being resorted, and yeah, that's where things kind of get a little bit hairy. Like if you're deleting an element or resorting them, like that's where you need to kind of watch out for things. All right. But for now, index is fine. That's a totally perfect value in this case. So errors should be gone. They are, or the warnings rather. Okay, cool. So yeah, so we know that the click is working, console log and click. So now what we need to do is we need to elevate this function, right? And so we're going to, all the way from up here, from this app.js, we're going to say handle click, and then what that's going to do is still console.log clicked. Okay, we're going to take that function and pass it all the way down into box. So like 4 components deep. So I'm going to say on click equals this dot handle click. So now in the board component, we have on click available to us as a prop. And we're going to pass that into it, called on click, which means in the row component, we have on click available to us. We're going to pass that in. I misspelled that. And then now, finally, in the box component, we have on click. So now here, we say on click. So this should still work. This should give us the same result, and it does. Okay, cool. So now we need to know which box we are clicking. Well, we have the box index here, here. And so we can pass that in. So we're going to say box index, and we're going to pass in the index. Actually, let's a better name for this would be column index. That would be a more appropriate name. So now we're going to pass in column index, and let's pass column index up. What we can't do is this. We can't say column index just like that, because then as soon as this renders, this function will execute. Watch, you're going to see it. You're going to see it console log clicked. There it is, 9 times for 9 boxes, right? That's bad. So we don't want that. So instead what we do, you do what you saw a second ago when I was console logging here. You pass it back like as a callback function. So now this whole thing is a function which returns the click handler, right? This onClick function. And so it returns this function here. So now it clicks whenever I actually do the click, and we are passing in this column index, which means now it's available to us here. So clicked column index. That's column 1, or rather column with index 1, column with index of 2, column with index of 0. But if you notice, that's not enough information. These are all 0, 1, 2. So that just tells us which column we are in. So now what we need to do, so we need to take this row index and pass that in. And so we're going to say row index equals index. You might be thinking, well, you have the key right here. Why not just reference it by the key? You actually can't do that. You can't pass in key as a prop because of its unique purpose that it serves that I explained earlier. So row index, pass that in. So now in the row, we have row index available to us. And so now we can pass row index down into the box. So now we have row index available here. So now row index is available to us here as the second argument, which means it now exists here. All right, so now each of these should be unique. 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2. So these are all unique now. One thing that I like to do, if you notice, we're getting all the data we need, so that's cool. However, if this were a function that we're going to be using in lots of places, writing it this way means that every time I call this function, I have to remember the order of my arguments. And let's say that there's an argument I don't need, like an optional param. Then I'm going to have to pass in something as a placeholder, and that is just not very readable code. So what I like to actually do is wrap this in an object. And so what that means, and so now I can actually destructure it here, right? Using destructuring, this should work the same way. So yeah, same result, right? Still have the same data I need. What that means is now the order doesn't matter, right? I could say row index and then column index, and it still works. This is still giving me the same data as before. Now the order doesn't matter because it's just an object. I could also clean it up by saying const indexes equals an object of column index and row index. If you're unfamiliar with this syntax, this is basically me saying column index equals column index, row index equals row index. It's just a more simplified way of doing that. And so it's kind of the shorthand approach. So now I have indexes, so I can just pass in that object. So again, this should be the same result, and it is. Cool. So you can already see how that's a lot cleaner. It's a shorter line. This is just very clear, very clean. Huge fan. All right, cool. So now we have to, in here, handle two things. The first thing we have to do is assign whatever this current value is to the appropriate um, element in this grid using column index and row index. And then the second thing we have to do is we have to, after that's done, or while it's happening, honestly, we have to flip the current value. So let's first just get it on the board, right? So we're going to destructure. We know that we're going to need both of these items. So let's go ahead and destructure both of them. Current value and grid equals this dot state. All right, so we're going to say, so we've got our grid, and then we know that we need our row index and our column index. So we're going to say, first thing we're going to do is grab our row index, and then we're going to grab the column box off of that and set it equal to current value. Then we have to reset the state. So we'll say this dot set state, and then just pass in the grid. So what that's saying is, okay, we've changed this grid, and then now we're going to reapply it. This would be a great time, though, to use clone deep. That kind of helps us give us a fresh copy of our state. So what we're actually going to do is say const cloned grid equals low dash, sorry, not low dash, clone deep grid. So now here we can say cloned grid, and now grid is cloned grid. All right, so this should work. Let's see. Yeah, that worked. And if I click this one down here, that worked. Cool. So obviously we're not passing in the value to the page yet, but you can see that it actually is manipulating the data the way that we want it to. So now all we have left to do is pass the value in. So this is actually really easy. It's already available to us. In this row, we have this box right here. As we are mapping over the row, what this represents is that string. And so I'm going to create a prop call value and pass in the box. So now here I have value, and instead of passing in an x, I pass in a value. Let's see. Cool. Yeah, it's looking good. That's working. And then, as I said before, all we have to do now is flip the current value. And so I'm going to say, so we have our cloned grid, and there are two ways that we could handle this. I'll show you I'll show you one approach, and then I'll show you the other approach. I'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages over each. So show you this one first. All right, cool. So first one is to have a function that flips the state for you. So I'm going to call this flip value. What that's going to do is it's going to take our current value, and then we're going to set our next value. And so if current value equals x, make it O, else make it x. So this is saying, okay, is current value x? If it is, then make it O. If it's not, then make it x. And so this is where you would have to have a ternary. Like the and operator that we do over here wouldn't exactly work because we have to set it to one or the other, right? So then we can say this dot, oops, whoa, I don't know what that is. This dot set state. Then we can say current value equals next value. So what we could do is we could assign this, and then as a callback, we can say this dot flip value. So this should work for us. This should get us our X's and O's. Yeah, so that's working. We're getting X's and O's alternating, right? So that looks good. This is this is the way I usually prefer to do it just from a readability standpoint. The reason I like to do it this way is because um, this is serving the purpose of changing the array. This is serving the purpose of changing the value. It's very like they're small functions that do one thing. That's what I like about it. However, the disadvantage to doing it this way, is that we are setting the state here, and what that does is it causes the app to render, which then means all of these children render. And then this flip value also sets the state, which causes another render. So now we've got two renders happening really fast, which in an app like this is not a big deal. But as things scale, and if you take this approach everywhere throughout the app, then perhaps you have unnecessary renders, which could be a bad thing. So from a visual code readability perspective, I like this. However, might not be the best performance. So we're going to refactor this and say we already have current value. So we're going to extract that here, and we're not going to use a callback. We're going to set the grid to the cloned grid, and we're going to say current value equals next value. And that means we can get rid of this function altogether. So this should still work the same way, right? So it didn't really make it that much longer, but now this function is doing two things. So you would definitely want to add some comments in here just to kind of say what everything is doing. But now there's only one render for this action. This should still give us the same result, and it does. Cool. So that's the benefit. Honestly, I would probably do it this way. As much as I like the other way, and the way it looks better, this is the smarter way to do it, just as far as performance goes. One last thing I want to do in this video, if you notice, these X's and O's don't look very good. And so we're going to go into this box and kind of style the value. So we have this box style here, and so we're going to say, we're going to give this some display flex. We're going to say justify content center. That doesn't really change anything yet. That still just centers it, so it doesn't look any different. But if we say align items center, whoa, align items center, now they should be vertically centered as well. And then we just have to figure out the font size, right? And so we can say font size, let's call it, I don't know, right now let's call it 50. So that's better for sure. However, where that would break and cause problems is if I were to change the size of the box drastically. Then that starts to look funny again, right? So what I would actually do is make this a percentage of your size. And so we're going to say font size is size times 0.75. So it's 75% of your font size. So as you make the box bigger, if I said let's make the boxes 200 pixels wide, now these should be 150 pixels, right? So you get the idea. So the font size grows with it. So if we went back to our little hashtag tic-tac-toe board, then these should be like the just really tiny. I can't even. Oh, it's there, yeah. So you get the idea. Anyway, um, cool. So that's it for now. In the next video, we're going to talk about how to actually then check for the winning condition.